Hello there, and welcome back to the Codex, and welcome back to another build video for one of the frames we got back with this Mega Prime Resurgence event currently going on. And today is, of course, as you can see, Harrow, another frame that I don't think I've ever done a build video for before, so let's go ahead and hop right into this. We're going to start off with the Archon shards, of course, per usual. Now, these shards are not mandatory, per usual. They do, of course, make the build feel better, and I would recommend probably using at least some of them, especially the casting speed shard and the parkour velocity, depending on how much you're going to be jumping around. And the other three are just duration shards, giving us 45% extra duration since we're using 3 of these. Now, if you feel like you don't need this extra amount of duration, because as you can see, we do have a lot of duration on this build. We're at almost 300%. If you want to have more strength instead, even though the version of the build that I'm using doesn't really need strength, to be honest, you could go for strength, or you could go for some other kind of utility. You could go for more parkour, more cast, you could go for violet shards. You can do whatever you want, it doesn't matter. If you want to do even more weapon damage, you could switch to a emerald corrosive shard, for example, because this is a weapons platform build. So you can just keep all of those choices in mind. Now, hopping into the actual build here, as you probably saw when we were looking at the Archon shards, because of the ability view, this is a evade Harrow build. This is a extremely comfortable way to play Harrow, and it's also very synergistic with his kit, because basically everything about Harrow's kit enjoys him getting headshots. You get extra energy back from Thurible for getting headshots. You deal way more critical damage on headshots thanks to Covenant, because Covenant gives you up to 50% flat critical chance to all of your weapons, and that's quadrupled up to 200% at max on landing a headshot. And again, that's flat crit. So if you have a weapon that has, 14% crit chance, for example, it takes it from 14% all the way up to 214%. It is not additive crit. It's like a 200% Arcane Avenger, basically. So we're basically just building around this synergy. And yes, this is a very weird looking build, because again, the whole point of this build is to be a super comfortable, very passively tanky, and very powerful weapons platform Harrow, which is also why we're using Arcane Crepuscular. This gives you an extra 30% strength while you're invisible, along with another flat extra 3x critical damage multiplier to, again, all of your weapons. So when you combine this with Evade, since we're going to be permanently invisible as long as you keep landing headshots, this means that in total, the combination we have going on is that as long as we keep getting headshots, we have permanent invisibility, and we have permanent Covenant, because we're using the lasting Covenant augment, which gives you, again, on headshot, you can see a lot of headshot synergy here, continuously giving you back duration to that Covenant. So permanent Covenant, permanent Evade, permanent Crepuscular damage buff, permanent crit chance buff from Covenant, again, so on. There's a lot of synergy here. In terms of the survivability, of course, a huge part of the kit's survivability is going to come from just simply being invisible. Another layer of survivability on top of that, especially important if you ever happen to take like a random status effect from an Arson Xmas, for example, or you get a mag proc on you or whatever. We have Rolling Guard, which lets you roll, become completely invulnerable for 3 seconds with a 7-second cooldown, and it also cleanses status effects off you. So if you do get like a slash proc or like a Jade Light happens to hit you, you get a heat proc on you, you can just roll, instantly cleanse that off yourself, and get 3 seconds of invulnerability. Speaking of invulnerability, since we also have 2,072 shields in this, we are well past the max shield gate threshold, capping out at 2.5 second shield gate. So if they do actually break all your shields, that's another automatic invulnerability for 2.5 seconds. And you can see here that our shield recharge delay is all the way down to only 0.2 seconds, and we regain almost 300 shields per second after that very, brief activation time occurs. And that's because we're using a combination of both Vigilante Vigor and a fast deflection, giving us both a ton of extra shield recharge delay increase, or reduction, increase, and shield recharge delay reduction. So yeah, extra shield recharge rate per second, and the delay to start that recharge is reduced by both these mods. You can see if we take both of these off, we go from 300 per second, basically in a 0.2 delay, all the way down to, it takes a whole second for that delay to start recharging shields, and it's only 118 per second. So the combination of those is very potent passive shield taking. And again, you're only going to occasionally take shield damage in the first place because we are invisible. So primarily, the only time you're going to take shield damage is from those AoE effects that are, hitting the whole room. On top of that, to further keep our shields up and to further synergize with that very rapid passive shield regeneration, we have the active forced shield regeneration from Arcane Aegis, which gives you a 3% chance every time you take any shield damage to restore 30% of your shields every second for 12 seconds. This basically results in you being completely immortal for 12 seconds, aside from like toxin procs, effectively. So as you can see, this whole build is really just entirely based around being super comfortable and dishing out a ton of damage. I also didn't mention, but we are of course using Worthy Camaraderie just to, you know, again, we're trying to go for almost exclusively headshots. This feeds into that. It's even more crit chance on those headshots, because why not? Although another option you could have, if you wanted even more tankiness, is you could go Brief Respite for your aura instead, because honestly, we really don't need the extra damage from Worthy Camaraderie. It's just kind of funny. So if you want to do this instead, feel free to do that. That way, every time you cast anything, like primarily your 2, because you can, that's the kind of, like the 2 and the 3 are kind of like the spammable abilities on his kit currently. You can feel free to do that. If you want even more defense, you could also, instead of replacing the 1 for evade, you could replace the 3 with evade if you feel like you can get away without Thuribal's energy economy. I do like the energy generation from this, especially if you are in a team scenario, because this does give your whole team the energy whenever you get those kills that give you that energy back. But if you want to keep his Condemn ability, which allows you to get shields back on every enemy hit by Condemn and crowd control them, that would be just yet another defensive layer. This is not a build here, by the way. This is random garbage from a long time ago, so this is not an alternative build. Ignore this. It would be this build, but with a different Helmuth location. So yeah, with that all out of the way, I mean, let's go ahead and look at the weapons here. So of course, before we get into the very interesting choices of Perigale and the Knell Prime, because I wanted to show you guys some interesting weapons to use with him, I would be doing you a disservice if I didn't point out that, yes, of course, per usual, the dual Toxicist is absolutely a disgusting combination for DPS just in general. And on this build, it's enhanced even further with the extra crit chance, the extra crit damage from Crepuscular, and the ricochet rounds from the dual tox are able to ricochet into headshots, further feeding into getting those really easy headshots to upkeep your evade and to upkeep that Covenant augment. So if you want to see this version of the build, it's just my Blast Corrosive build. It's Blast Electric in the arsenal here because it becomes Blast Corrosive in mission with the toxin damage that you get on headshots. So in an actual mission, it's Blast Corrosive. This is disgusting on Harrow. I'll go ahead and showcase that. If you are going to use this on Harrow, don't use Innervate, because again, you're going to get like 200% free flat crit chance thanks to Harrow. So you can instead drop this for even more defense and put on something like Secondary Fortify, for example, is what I would probably do. Or you could do Deadhead or whatever, it doesn't matter, but you really don't need the crit chance from Innervate in this build. Let's go ahead and showcase this real quick before we hop on to the more esoteric weapons. All right, so we're in the mission. As you can see, just as a quick little showcase, of course, our shields are super passively tanky, especially when Aegis kicks in, you're straight up immortal, essentially. Go ahead and activate your Thurible first to get that energy regen. Let's get my dual tox back here. I did not mean to stab that guy, but all right. Go ahead and get some headshot kills to get that energy going. Go ahead and pop your 4th to get that crit chance from Covenant, of course. And then once all of that is said and done, we can go ahead and, again, get some energy back to cast Evade. And now we are invisible. And we will have that permanent evade up, essentially, especially easy with the dual toxin. Right now, we don't have the crit chance. We're about to get it. There we go. Covenant just activated the crit chance phase. We got flat 50% or 200% on the headshot. And now you can see we're getting all the way up to free red crits without having Innervate on and without using the critical evolution on the dual tox. I'm using the 3 meter, a punch through evolution. So perfect combination here. This is probably the literal best weapon for this Harrow setup. I just wanted to show you guys something different because I know, you know, everybody probably already knows the dual tox is amazing, and you guys might want to see something a bit more, you know, unique. So let's go ahead and hop back to the arsenal and showcase the Perigale and the Knell Prime builds. All right, so taking a look at the Perigale here. Again, this is going to be a very weird looking build because it's specifically designed for Harrow. We're going to use a mod that you've probably never seen people really use, to be honest. Target acquired, because why not? It fits. We don't have to run crit chance on this build, for example. So might as well get the extra headshot multiplier. This build does so much damage that you could honestly like drop 2 or 3 of these mods and you would still be killing enemies. So you can really feel free to play around with the mod variety on this this Harrow loadout. Now, especially if you have like a Riven, if you get a good Riven, you can make it even more absurd. But you know, per usual, I don't show builds with Rivens because they're not replicable. So we're going with mostly just a standard crit corrosive cult build here, with the difference of, again, we're using target acquired because since we don't need crit chance, we have at least 1 mod slot freed up. We're also using Deadhead because, you know, of course, we're going for headshots on this Harrow build. And we are using Spectral Serration because we are, of course, able to benefit from that 330% base damage while invisible, thanks to being invisible constantly with Evade. So it's yet another Evade synergy they're able to take advantage of. Now, the reason why the Perigale is really fun on this build is because it has a passive that gives you unlimited ammo as long as you keep getting headshot kills or headshot burst hits. Basically, it gives you, it says landing a headshot kill or 4 headshots in one burst grants plus 100% ammo efficiency for 4 seconds. And if you are using on Veruna, it has another passive, but that's irrelevant because, you know, we're not playing Veruna. So if you keep landing these headshot kills, you will have a essentially bottomless magazine Perigale, and especially when it's enhanced by all of the crit chance from Harrow and all of the crit damage from Crepuscular, and then of course just this build here, it does monstrously high amounts of damage, millions and millions of damage. And as for the Knell build, let me go ahead and switch back to that here, and switch back to the proper one. The Knell has a similar passive of giving you, again, unlimited ammo on headshots. So as long as you keep getting these headshot kills, which is super easy with the Knell, because again, it does monstrously high amounts of damage, you have a bottomless magazine Knell as well, and it also gives you extra critical damage and status chance. So you actually have more crit damage and status chance than the arsenal makes it appear like you have, because these are conditional buffs. Now, the really cool thing about this, about how easy it is to maintain, is that you can get up to 3 stacks of this buff, and each stack individually falls off, and each stack is 2 seconds. So in reality, you only actually have to get 1 headshot every 6 seconds to maintain this infinite ammo, and you're going to be getting a lot more headshots than that, unless, I mean, you have really bad aim, but that's, you know, that's of course a different story. But it's very, very easy to permanently keep this permanent ammo, which is the main buff you care about. Now, ideally, of course, you would like to stay at 3 stacks to also get the full crit damage and a full status chance buff, but as long as you have at least 1 stack, that's the important part, because all you really primarily care about is that infinite ammo, because most of your damage is again taken care of with the crit chance and crit damage from the Harrow build itself. Now, as for the mods here, again, pretty standard crit build. Again, we're not using any crit chance mods because Harrow is giving us all the crit chance, so we're just modding crit damage like Target Cracker. And we are using Merciless Gunfight because since this build does so much damage, I want to add punch through to this, because you're going to be overkilling almost anybody that you hit, especially with headshot damage. So I would like to be able to hit multiple enemies to have these single target weapons be slightly less single target, and be able to maybe kill 2, 3, 4 guys in a single shot instead of just 1 person at a time, which also, I don't think I mentioned it, but that's why I'm using Prime Shred on the Perigale build, primarily because this gives 2.2 meters of punch through. If you don't have Prime Shred, you can feel free to use regular Shred, or if you really just want to keep that high punch through value, you can even use Metal Auger. It's not a mod that we typically use because all it gives is 2.1 meters of punch through. But if you don't care about the smaller punch through and the smaller fire rate from regular Shred, because you don't really need fire rate, since Harrow also gives you fire rate, you could opt for just the punch through from Auger. Again, if you don't have Prime Shred, which this is the ideal mod to use, because this is actually even more punch through than this mod is, and it gives you the fire rate. So buffs on buffs on buffs. So that's the build here. We don't really use melee at all in this build, or at least I'm not using melee, because again, we're primarily going for headshots. So I'm just sticking with my Praetos here with melee Kareen. This does give you the extra utility, being able to roll through guys and freeze them. So it makes them even easier to headshot, makes them take even more crit damage. And as always, I'm using my standard Panzer build, which I actually forgot to change that back. Standard Panzer, so I am benefiting from the extra fire rate from Reinforced Spawn and the extra crit damage from Tenacious Spawn. So with that all out of the way, let's go ahead and hop into this mission and showcase just how funny this is. All right, we're in the mission here. Went ahead and activated my Thurible to get energy. Let's go ahead and activate that Covenant to get that crit chance buff. Now make sure that you do cast Covenant before Evade, because of course it's going to be hard to take the damage necessary to charge up your Covenant if you're invisible and enemies are not directly able to target you. So we're going to charge this first and then activate Evade, and also make sure you activate your 2 for that fire rate buff. And now we go to town. You just got to land 1 headshot, and then the Knell starts to go absolutely crazy. As you can see, we are hitting at times 5+ million damage. There's a I think I saw a 2.4 million right there. Let's go ahead and see. There's a 5.5 million red crit, 3.7 million. So yeah, it does absolutely ludicrous damage. Another thing that you could do on either of these builds is you could consider using a blast setup instead if you wanted to do those really high damage blast procs. Now, it's not going to have the highest status chance of, you know, the weapons in the game, but it procs enough thanks to the Knell status buff that you could get some reliable enough blast procs that it would be pretty funny extra AoE. And with this much, you know, crit scaling, those blast procs would do absolutely ludicrous amounts of damage. The only problem that you might have with using a blast build is that any enemies killed by the blast AoE, of course, won't count as a headshot kill. So if you're constantly killing groups of enemies with the blast AoE, you might actually have a harder time keeping up the evade and the Covenant stacks. Which, speaking of which, if you look in the bottom right, you can see that we'd have a completely infinite evade and infinite lasting Covenant thanks to them both getting duration back on headshots. So again, that's the synergy I was talking about of this build, being fully built around headshots and invisibility and the extra crit and all that. So it's a fun time. It's a ton of damage. Let's go ahead and pull out the Perigale Hill. Here, the Perigale's the same concept. It's going to give you permanent ammo as long as you keep those headshots. The fire rate's not going to be as insane as the Knell because, again, this is a sniper rifle. But given the fact that it's a sniper rifle and the base fire rate is actually quite low, the fact that we can make it this fast and it does this much damage, basically turning it into a more of like a precision rifle instead of a sniper rifle, is pretty funny. Again, we're able to hit millions of damages at 1.3 mil right there, 1.2 mil, so on, 10 million, and that was only an orange crit. So you can scale this. There's a 16 million. Oh my god. You can scale this damage into absurdly higher levels. These guys are only around level 200, for example. But since we're doing several like orders of magnitude more damage than their total health, that means that you would still be one-shotting guys even if they were level 1000 instead of 200. So if you want to take this build to a much higher level, you can of course feel free to do that. So yeah, that's basically it. Like I said, super comfortable, tons of damage, basically infinite energy economy. This was the goal for the build. I know the build looks weird. It's not the classic Harrow build that you're used to seeing, but it really works for the goal of what we're trying to do here. It's super comfortable. It's super high damage. It's very low maintenance. You have half of your abilities you don't even have to recast ever, basically, since they're automatically getting duration back. It's just a very, very chill Harrow build, and I think a lot of you will probably like something like that. So hopefully you guys liked it. Hopefully you found it educational. Hopefully you found it entertaining. That's the Harrow build. Come back later in the week. I'm probably gonna try to flesh out some more of those Prime Resurgence builds since there's so many frames currently back available. And I will see you guys in the next one.